Hello. Well, I'm sorry to say I have more good news for you. Well, sort of good news anyway. And we'll start by saying I didn't think they'd manage it, but yes, the police identified the ringleaders, or at least some of them, of the mob that tore down the statue of Edward Colston in Bristol last year during the BLM riots, which affected us here as well, although perhaps not quite so badly as they affected you guys in the USA. Anyway, they tore down the statue, covered it in red paint, and as if that was not enough, they then threw it into the bay. Now, or the harbour, or the sea, or whatever. I can't see the point of covering it in red paint and then throwing it in the sea, but I suspect that they didn't really know what they were doing. They started off with the paint, and then somebody said, "Oh, let's throw it into the sea as well." And it just shows how organised they were. But the police not only identified the perps, but they arrested them, which is unusual. And then, amazingly enough, the Crown Prosecution Service went ahead with prosecuting them. The four are, and I'm going to give their ages for a reason: Rhiannon Graham, 30, Jake Scooser, 33, Milo Ponsford, 26, and Sage Willoughby, 22. They're on trial now in Bristol Crown Court, appropriately enough, and the case for the prosecution was set out by William Hughes QC, and he said as follows: "We accept that Edward Colston was a divisive figure. However, we say what Edward Colston may or may not have done, good or bad, is not on trial." And that's the point. If there'd been a trial for whether the statue should have been there or not, that's another matter. The jury saw videos of the incident, and as of this video I'm making here, we're waiting for the outcome. I do hope they're found guilty. You will know, but it's not an entirely unmixed blessing, as I said. You'll notice that there were a couple of people over the age of 30 who you'd think would know better, wouldn't you? But I have an idea that they just sort of dragged that 22-year-old along with them, and she probably thought she was, you know, a big, strong revolutionary or whatever. And if she's found guilty and gets imprisoned or whatever, they've ruined her life, haven't they? And also we have to remember that in the charge there are the words "and others unknown," which means that perhaps, well, there were many more, and some of them could have been worse, and they got away with it. So, as I said, a mixed blessing, but at least it's a proper reaction. Of course, I've given some thought to the argument, what if it was a statue of Pol Pot there? Wouldn't you feel like tearing it down? And the answer is that I wouldn't think much of it, and I'd maybe do what I could peacefully and within the law to have it removed as inappropriate, but I wouldn't tear it down. Look, in Durnsford Road, it's at Albert Road Park in Muswell Hill in North London, the Haringey Council, which is oh so sympathetic to whatever anyone does, provided they're on the left, they put up a memorial statue to Oliver Tambo, who lived in Muswell Hill for many years. He was a member of the ANC, and he was on the run from the South African authorities. The statue is truly dreadful, very typical of what you might call socialist architecture. And just on artistic grounds alone, I would be inclined to tear it down. And on moral grounds, well, Tambo organised murders and terror attacks in South Africa. When he was safely dead, the South African Truth and Reconciliation Committee identified Tambo as the person responsible for the 1983 Church Street bombing, which killed 19 people and seriously and injured some seriously around 200 people. Now, Tambo claimed that 11 of the victims were Defence Forces personnel. He was quite satisfied that he got 11 Defence Forces personnel and killed 19 people and changed the lives of around 200. And it turned out in the end that the Defence Forces personnel he was so proud of murdering, or organising the murder thereof, they were typists and telephonists. It wasn't the only thing he's done, but look, my opinion is that he was a violent murderer and not a nice person. On the other hand, because there was no other way of dealing with apartheid at the time, you know, there's a possibility that you could have justified at least some of the violence in South Africa. I don't have the space here to go into the philosophical arguments about that. That's a whole separate issue. But certainly he was a murderer, and certainly he did nothing for the people of Muswell Hill. So I don't see any reason to honour him with that sort of a memorial. And as I said, terrible piece of art as well. I'll find a photo of it. But even so, I never had the serious urge to tear down that statue. Although there must be many who do, because I haven't seen so much security around a statue ever before. Anyway, back to Colston. The statue was there not to honour Colston's career, which wasn't a nice career, you know, everyone knows that, but to honour the orphanages and other charitable institutions he set up for the people of Bristol. Look, when knights came back from the Crusades, they endowed churches with some of the wealth they brought back with them, because they were aware that they'd earned their wealth from making war and killing people, and for the good of their souls they wanted to make up for it in some way. So, as I said, they endowed churches, they commissioned carvings and statues. And are we going to tear down these churches and institutions now because they were endowed by violence and war? Well, actually, we don't have to really destroy the Church of England, do we? The Church of England's doing a splendid job on its own. No, let's get back to Colston. We have to decide what sort of civilization we want to live in. One where the mob decides what it likes and what it doesn't like, or one where we have a rule of law. The Colston statue has an owner. It's the city of Bristol, or whatever endowment put it up there. And we can't allow people to destroy other people's property just because they don't like it. I don't like one of the houses down the street. I consider it a blot on the landscape. You know, that's not my job. That's not what I'm supposed to do just because I don't like it. I'm really glad that the law is actually, in this case, being used for its intended purpose. So, well, look, that's pretty unusual nowadays, isn't it? Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.